Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another week. Well, here we are showing the perfect use case if something crashes to come back online. I'm saying this because, well, after using the MacBook Pro M1 with, well, 4 displays, 2 studio displays from Apple, 5K displays, no problems at all when it comes to performance. But at some point, especially if you somebody who is reviewing and testing a lot of software, you reach a point where just everything crashes. And this is the moment where you will be happy to have a system in place, and that a system is independent from the tool or the device that you are using. And here we are. The only thing that is missing is the background in our visuals here, but it doesn't matter. We are live. And this is where, well, it's always a joy to do these refreshing moments to just clean the plate and start from scratch. But if you know exactly what you do step by step to bring things back, so you can just get rid of the noise that was there and just focus on the things that matter. And this being said, let me just quickly check that we are also live inside the membership. Paco, you also set up your MacBook recently, right? From scratch, or am I wrong?
Well, no, not so. I cannot remember that because, well, we changed the computer because we got a renting of devices here, and well, I changed my iMac, but that was it. I installed everything from scratch. That was,
Yeah,
by the
that's what
way,
I thought when
quite
you
fast.
wanted to set
Yeah,
up
yeah,
your new PKA locally. Yeah.
correct, correct. And well, it worked quite well. I'm happy with it. And by the way, well, the last iMac, well, it works pretty well, pretty well. An amazing
Yeah,
machine.
it's certainly not the processor that had issues. That's for sure. It's insane
No,
when people say, well, you can just use Apple devices for 1 year and that's it. I don't know who is this
no.
where I still have a iPad 2018. It works perfectly. So even
Yeah.
a 2017 iPad I have there and it's still working. So yeah,
Yeah,
but not let's not
correct.
focus on Apple too much. For sure, later this year we will have more options to talk about this. Um,
I hope so.
but the recovery process might be interesting to
Amazing.
talk about a bit more because in the order of recover, and for those who are following us, we are using a local folder where we have our personal knowledge base in there and letting AI manage it for us. I mean, this is already the big distinction. People always combine everything together as one thing. And the moment you realize there are different parts of something, you're much more flexible in optimizing, upgrading, killing, rebuilding. And in this case, the local folder is the actual data, the knowledge base, our personal knowledge base. Paco has its own, I have my own. And then on top, there's the brain, which is Claude, Gemini, or whatever. I point towards this folder. And the way that we build this folder, there are instructions inside the folder that guide this brain to understand what is inside the folder, that there are different team members that the AI should take advantage of. So there are skills, what people may know. For Claude, that's the same thing inside the folder. It's just instructions where to find information, how to connect to a specific external tool, how to manage any knowledge that I bring in there by capturing something. This is 3 things, right? So we have this actual knowledge that we rely on. Then we have the instructions that we need for how to organize this folder. And then we put on the brain that actually leverages these instructions. So if I remove the brain, if I remove the instructions, it's still me being able to manage this knowledge base and it will never change. And that's what people maybe get confused with, that we talk about AI and this local folder and how to use it. But before that, we've been using exactly the same approach in our personal knowledge management tools and note-taking apps. It's the same thing. It is based on the My Life concept, how we organize our knowledge around our life. Key element, not going too deep into this, but key elements, topics, projects, now goals and habits. These things are always the same. structure, the same principles based on the ICOR methodology that we can apply to everything, even on a piece of paper. And if you get this in mind and you keep this in mind, then you look at it. How can I optimize the organization? How can I remove the friction that I need to connect the information inside the folder? And then you look into automations and you look into AI. And we see this every now and then in comments where people get this confused and everything needs to work with one. And then if they want to switch to something else, they think they need to kill their knowledge base. And that is never the case if you understand the different compartments of a system. Yeah, and this is where, sorry, Paco, the last thing I want to add here. When I recovered, I realized how powerful our local folder approach is, because I thought, okay, let's spend $200 and upgrade to the Perplexity computer, which is promoting that they control your computer, they control your browser, you can access a local folder too, and so on. So I did this because I thought it would be a great idea that I have access from anywhere in the world, on my mobile device and so on, and it has this context. But the moment I launched Perplexity on this, it has no clue. It doesn't understand what the folder structure is. It is not able to read instructions and keep this in mind, because it's a complete different purpose. So if you use something like Perplexity Computer, that's my conclusion here, you put yourself into their ecosystem and then it works. But you are not in control. So thinking about what I initially said about the local folder, the files, all the things that you own, and then you're putting something on it to help you with it, is so much more flexible than you now rely on something that you first don't know how long it will last. And then if they change how it works, it will change the way how you can access it and all these things that come with it. So that's why we bet on this local folder approach. It is just perfect the way it works.
Yeah, because the last week I had another bleeding experience. Okay, once again. Okay, it happened, and in this case it was a process that went crazy. Okay, and it started calling itself and constantly calling agents. And well, I was consuming tokens at a rate of 1% of my weekly limit per minute. Okay, so I was trying to stop that process. It wasn't easy, and I was, well, just refreshing, the usage page on Claude code, and it was amazing, man. 1%, 2%, 3% per. I said, what the heck, man? I cannot, because now we have something that it's well, it's not easy to work without AI nowadays. Okay, it was exactly the same sensation when we started trusting on the internet and we had email and all these type of new tools at that moment, that the moment we lost connection with internet, everything crumbled. And that's what happened to me. Okay, so I finally decided to stop, and while I was figuring out what has happened, okay, I decided to give a try to Codex, because I had never tried. And it was impressive. It was impressive because, well, you go into a different system in theory, okay? And the moment that I point towards the PK folder, it worked exactly the same way. And for me, it was amazing. I could refer to my agents. It everything about me. And well, I didn't have the time to experience how coding or using Codex for coding was, but I was really delighted, because that gave me that sensation of freedom, that at any moment, only Gemini is missing for me. Talking about testing it out, I know you did, Tom, but in my case, with Claude Code and with Codex, everything worked perfectly, and I'm really happy about it, because that gives us the freedom we've always wanted, okay, to create a structure that we understand, to have, by the way, the workflows, because we have put into action those concepts and receive the expected outcomes. Okay, I made a test out of, well, the golden nuggets that we publish every single day, or editing a draft of an article and working with it, and it worked perfectly. Also, well, all the journal creation, okay. And by the way, the moment that I was able, to stop that demon that was running crazy, I was able to even fix the things using Codex. Okay, so for me it was quite an amazing experience because I never did it. And well, this shows clearly that it works, okay? And the moment that you lose control, for instance, like this experience that you have just talked about using Perplexity, that's not the right approach. And it's exactly the same approach when we try to use Claude Code using the desktop app on mobile, okay? That well, creates like synthesis, okay, of your repository, of your repo, and then, well, more or less you can access to your information, but it's not the same.
That's a
Okay,
good.
talking about the experience, it has nothing to do. Okay, and that's why it's important to understand that we need to bet on brains, okay, that allows you to point to a folder and then you can work with it.
That's a perfect segue into a comment from YouTube here. Let's see if we can. Yeah, there we go. And that's a good question. Larry and the specialists are one model switching heads inside the same context, and real parallelism only comes from Claude Code sub-agents. So why have a layer of named personas at all? And that makes sense, and it's a very important comment that has a lot more in it than it seems on the surface. So let's see if my sharing works already.
By the way, this is crucial to understand.
So
this is crucial to understand because you're going to suffer if you don't understand that, because you will run out of context immediately, okay? And partially that was what happened to me, okay? There was a moment that the orchestrator wasn't doing his thing, and I started calling different projects, different processes, sorry, in the exact same window, and well, it ran away quite quickly.
Yeah, but what I want to point out here, it really depends what AI model you use, but also in what interface you're using it. So here is my PKA, that's my personal one, and what Ivan is referring to is this team here. So I have a lot of team members that are for my private folder here. And this is how we structure it. Each team member has their own folder, and there's an agents.md file that holds the instructions for this individual member agent. And this makes no sense if you used a lot of Claude before that, because then you might know that Claude has this .claude folder, and then if you open up, you have here the agents folder, and now you see the same agents appearing in here. But the way we structured this local folder is that these MD files only give short instructions that it should focus on these actual instructions based here inside this folder. So why do we make this workaround? Well, first of all, it keeps us independent. I can switch to, as Paco just described, I can switch to Codex, I can switch to Gemini, and all have the same single source of truth when it comes to agents. So if I downloaded a lot of skills for Claude that you can get in packs and whatever, then you have Claude-specific skills, and obviously you can convert them then into Codex and so on. But having this independent folder structure and data structure makes it independent from anything. It could be now Grok just launched their own Opus competition, right? So I could use this one or Kimi or whatever other models I want to use, because all they need to understand is reading this adapter prompt that's based part of this folder. And in here, it just explains the AI how to set itself up based on how this AI works for itself. So it will create either a .claude folder or a .gemini folder or whatever, and then it replicates the agents inside the team inside here. So this means I can take advantage of the sub-agents in Claude and infect Larry, so what he refers to, Larry, that's the what we call the orchestrator inside the folder. You can call it whatever you like, but it's the Spock, the single person of contact that I can reach out to, and he will delegate the work to the individual agents in here, the different team members in here. And in parallel, so he will stay responsive for you, and at the same time, in parallel, there might be different agents working on several things that you told him. And here's the clue, or the crux. No, the thing that confuses people is if you use Claude inside the Claude desktop application and you use co-work, for example. This is not working. Because if you use it in co-work, there are no sub-agents. So Larry will literally start switching heads and pretending that he is another team member now working for you. Yes, he loads in the context because the thing is about this, that they are specialized in specific things that you need for you or your business to be done. However, this is not efficient at all when it comes to this compared to using Claude Code, where he literally launches these things in parallel and they're working with each other too. And this is something to keep in mind. And also when you use other models, I'm not even sure with Codex if they are launching sub agents yet, but that's where people ran into issues using other things like Claude that are not made with usage of these sub agents. And then it feels like, okay, he's just switching heads, so why should I do this in the first place? In the end, it's just skills that this agent has. And yeah, that's how you can see it if you want. But skills is something different in Claude, okay? It's not agents. There's a separate folder called skills, and agents is just a package of skills that are very specific for a specific use case that you want. I want to make a slide deck. Then I have an agent who is able to design the slide deck, and it has all the instructions. So the other reason to you have this is token saving. I saw comments, they said that this folder structure takes more tokens than if you would just use it without a structure and just working inside the folder, because it keeps importing all these things. And this is not true. I mean, I'm using this for a year,
not at all.
And you have here the result of real work. Our whole application is built with this approach. We do daily business with these things. We do our own knowledge management, and token usage is a complete different thing when you use it this way. And why is this? I explained this quickly too. When you have something like Claude and you have a Claude.md file, like here, okay, that's what Claude creates. That gives, when you launch a Claude AI inside a folder, it will create this, so it understands what is the folder content, what should it do. And if you now keep saying, hey, learn this, you're now a front-end developer, now you're a designer, you're all this, you load all this into this Claude.md file, this becomes a very long file. Look how short this file is in our case. I don't know if you have comparison on your end, but this is very short. Why? Because it's just referring to the other places where this is the actual file for Larry, okay? That's what the orchestrator should do. And then all the other instructions are split into these team members. So this means all this is not living in one single file, but it's scattered into different files. And now the key of the orchestrator is to understand what you're requesting, to look up if there are any team members or skills, if you want, to get the work done that you're requesting for. And then it only loads in this context necessary to get the work done, instead of always loading in everything at once. And that's why organizing the things and pointing the AI just to the things that matter in this session makes it much more token efficient than not doing it and not doing it. And then I also saw a comment about compacting, and you should always compact at 120,000 tokens or whatever people say. And that makes no sense to me either, because I never felt any of this where people say AI becomes dumb over time when you have a long session. In my case, it's not the case. Why? Because we have now a 1 million context window for Opus. And it's so rare now that I even compact at all in any session, because it's such a big context window that I would be stupid starting to manually compact the things. And for those who don't know what compacting means, you have a chat session with AI going back and forth, and AI needs to keep the full context of all the information that you've been talking about. So you can jump back to a position and mention things that you talked about earlier. If you compact, it's like a compression. It removes the noise, it tries to at least, and then you have less and less full context. So This way, you're removing information that might be relevant and you leave it to AI to decide what information to keep. If I do this proactively, I keep always removing context from my session. Instead, I have always very specific sessions running with a specific task that I want to go. So I can stay focused in this session to get this task done. So I can keep this running for days to keep working on this without compacting once. And then in the end, I complete the session and it's done. And then I have rather several windows open with different tasks in parallel, working on the different items. And this is something I never ran into any issues, rather with token waste, nor with the need to compact something. Instead, I keep it open. I fill up this 1 million context window, and then I close the session because now it has the full context to really get insights out of the session, to make then a logging and write down what went good and what didn't go good. Well, you see, this was a very deep now going into this. So if you're new here, sorry about that. But for those who are following us for longer, this was a crucial thing I wanted to get out, because there's a lot of things out there and opinions on how it works and gut feelings. I can just say this is based on my own experience, and well, Paco will just confirm that he probably have something
No, and the
similar,
thing is
right?
that thanks to this bleeding experience I've just talked about before, I'd like to say that right now, for instance, I've taken advantage of I've taken advantage of this situation to start optimizing the things. Okay, I'm polishing workflows and things and files and everything in between. And the point is that right now for the orchestrator, I force myself to use Sonnet without any problem. 200K, not 1 million, and it works like a charm. I'm impressed about how fast I can do the back and forth, because the context that it consumes, it's really, really small, okay? It's just a delegator of things that I can quickly communicate the things, and then I can decide for each specific agent the standard model I want to work with, okay? And I think that that's pretty important, because in my case, just even using Sonnet in the orchestrator, for example, I didn't run out of context window at all, at all. I didn't even need to compact the conversation, okay? And I had the previous experience, because this is something I wanted to test, because that's why we are here, okay, to test different things and do the experiments. And with the previous non-optimized Claude MD that I had, okay, I was consuming even in Opus, okay, in Opus. So imagine how everything went crazy, talking about the starting point, and how the moment that you start really dissecting, summarizing, synthesizing, delegating tasks, creating, by the way, if you make studies, research, and analysis using Cloud Code to really optimize what each agent should do, plus what the illustrator should be, I was able to reduce to the minimum, okay, until, well, it's impossible, okay? I cannot keep removing things out of this starting point for Claude MD. And now I run my orchestrator using Sonnet really quickly, because talking about time response, there's a huge difference talking about how I receive the things, because Opus goes too deep into things that, for instance, you don't need at all. Like, for instance, choosing the right agent for each specific. And the beautiful thing is that I can start launching different processes that run in parallel. And for me, it shows, because also right now they include the option of seeing the different agents that they are calling. And it's important to see how you can be 100% sure that you are delegating to the right agents the different tasks, okay? And I think that the moment that you do a proper definition of each agent, the orchestrator manages it amazingly well. And also, by the way, the moment that that agent is perfectly defined, the outcomes are amazing, and the ones that you are expecting.
Yeah. And I want to share a question from Peter inside the community chat. First, he asks about the difference between, or does Gemini work like Claude does with for the switching of the agents, right? And this is where I'm not using heavily Gemini. I tested it, and Codex 2. And that's why we built this scaffold that you can download in this agent agnostic way so that you can initialize. I showed a video because that's this follow-up question from Peter. Could I use Gemini and terminal pointed to my PKA folder? Yes, you can. And that's exactly what I showed. I have to look up what video it was. But this is a very recent video where I introduced a new scaffold that is independent from models. And this is exactly the adopter.md that I just showed in the beginning of the session, where you point any model there and you just mention this adopter prompt MD, and it will initialize itself inside this folder. It doesn't matter if it is Gemini, Codex, or whatnot, and it will work. We tested it, it's working. And this also means that you could use different models in the same folder because they all have their own subfolders. But the beauty is they don't duplicate these skills. It stays inside this team folder and they just reference towards it. So therefore, I can update just one single source of truth, the team agent MD or whatever, inside these folders. And therefore, everything that points to them will get updated too. So the other thing, as I just wanted to mention, as I said, it's like something bad, that it is head switching, right? Instead of launching sub agents. If you use something like Cowork or any tools that cannot launch proper sub agents yet, it's still beneficial for the exact same reason that I mentioned in the beginning, that you save a lot of tokens because it loads in its initial instructions. Then you give a task, and even if the orchestrator himself or itself switches heads to the agent, it just loads in this context of this agent and works according to these instructions instead of having always the full context in mind. So even then, it's worth it. So now the last question from Peter: do I have to download something from Gemini or Codex, etc., first to use the terminal? Yeah, these are instructions. You need to look up for the individual things where you learn how to install these things inside the terminal, and then you can start using them. That's just common things that you learn.
But I have to say that all the agents take instructions that they execute themselves, and it's pretty easy. I had no clue how to install Codex and this type of things, and just by reading simple instructions and installing it, then everything
usually
goes
it is
pretty
just
easy and quickly.
Usually it's just a one-liner. Whenever you look for Codex, Gemini, how to install in terminal, you get just one line of bash command. It's just a sentence. And then you put this into the terminal and it will install the so-called CLI, which connects the external AI with your local machine, and that's it. And that works the same for Claude, Gemini, and all the other whatever you use there to install these locally. But these instructions can be set up and has nothing to do with the folders that we talk here or the functionality of this. And then I have another question here from Ivan again that I want to cover. Thank you for your reply. You ship 6 pre-hired specialists on day 1. Why these 6 and not just Larry who hires the rest as real need shows up? That's a great question, and I want to address this, the decision making behind this. So let me quickly switch again to screen sharing. So here we are inside the myPKA system cores. So you can download if you join the myICOR, you can download the folder for free and it works out of the box. We have this companion course to explain you step by step why we made the decision behind each folder. And if you go into these lessons, you see, let's go to a later lesson, so where it's more established. You see, here are the folders and even the files that you can click and see the content that we add to the files with the explanation why we've created the folder it is created, because in our opinion, it's much better for you to understand how this works so you can customize it the way you want it than just downloading another template or another Claude bot, another Hermes or whatever that you just don't understand what's going on and you keep asking, because by going through the course, you could literally build this from scratch for yourself because you understand it. So now the reason for the 6 agents that are there out of the box. Initially, there was just 3, okay? There was Larry here, the specialist, that's the orchestrator. He is delegating the work to other existing agents. Then we have the teams, well, let's stay here. Larry, and then we have Nolan. This is the HR person, and obviously you can always say, I want to have different names. So now you have a different name for your orchestrator and so on. We just use this as the examples. Nolan is HR. That's the personal, that's the person who hires new agents. And then we have Pex, who is a researcher. These 3 were there initially. And you're right, Ivan, because now I could just tell Larry, I need to have a designer. Or I want to design something. In fact, you would just say, I want to design something. He recognizes in this folder, we don't have a design specialist. He reaches out to Nolan, and Nolan says we need to hire somebody, reaches out to Pex to make research, what's the best designer that we can use for our use case. And then he customizes this team agent for your specific needs and hires this, which in fact just means that Nolan goes into the folder, he goes into the team, and he creates a new folder for a new team member. And what he is there for is creating this agent.md, the instructions for this agents to become a perfect designer. And by the way, now that we have this open, this is again a very short version of the instructions, because down here we have references to the standard operating procedures. That's again additional files that this agent can access instead of putting all these different documents into the same file too. And that's how we keep everything very lean. So once he created this folder, you can then he will be able to start working on your design request, for example. So now you mentioned there are 6. There are Pen. This is an agent who does journaling, or is a specialist in daily journaling, and he understands the structure of the different personal knowledge information. Well, the MyLife concept, it understands the MyLife concept, many things. So whenever I throw in a screenshot and I say make a journal entry out of it, he will understand what I mean by this. He will automatically create folders that have the daily journaling and all this. That's why we have this specialist out of the box there. And obviously you could customize or hire this for yourself. And then we have these 2 recently added. That is Mac, the connection specialist, and Silas, your database architect. So these were specialized agents earlier on. I was using them for months already. And what they do, one is understanding how APIs, MCP connections, and automations work. And the other one understands how databases work, okay? And why did we add them out of the box? Because, first of all, you're very likely that you want to connect to something like your Gmail, your Google Calendar, or whatever, or external databases. That's where Mac will be the guy who understands perfectly how to set it up. So how does this work? I say, I want to connect to my Gmail, to Larry. He will see, there's already Mac, he's a specialist. He will let Pex research the details, and then Mac starts implementing this, and Silas is the guy with the database who understands actually the structure of the folder itself. And that's why we have them out of the box. This being said, we have expansion packs here where you literally just download folders, as we show here, a folder that you add into an expansion subfolder inside your PKA. And then you just tell Larry, install this pack. And what it does, it just hires other agents that I use to run the myICOR product, which is the front and back end developers, the front end developer security and quality assurance, or the designer pack where you have a design system, thumbnail creation, slide decks for your company, and so on. So that's where we kept the things optional now, that you can always ask AI to create this for you. But here you have just the things that we are personally using. You download it, you put it in there, and it will install itself. Or Paco's Slack connection, he's using Slack to communicate with his team, and that's here too. And that's how we structured this. So we always can keep this basic folder as it is right now. There is no plans to change anything in here. Then we show here, install the expansions. That's the last lesson. And then you simply go here and install whatever you like. Or as Ivan said, you just ask Larry to hire this, because that's what we actually encourage. You know what you need in your business. You know what you need in your specific use case. And therefore, you can give very tight instructions what you're looking for. And it's something nobody can provide to you. And if you keep downloading these free packs and 100 skills and whatever, and then you complain afterwards about token issues, well, then I can tell you what the problem is. And this is exactly that you downloaded something without understanding why you did in the first place. Paco, any comment on that?
No, simply that it's what we said. We don't believe in templates. We just develop this to bring inspiration. We always say the same. If you share any of our lessons with your agents or your AI system as a starting point, it will generate something that probably will be much better understood by your current AI. And here, as they are markdown files, you can read and get inspiration. It's what we want, because this is fully customized and it depends on you, your needs, your use case. So the more you customize your personal AI assistant, the better, okay? Because it will deliver the outcomes. And this is based on, well, our experience. Obviously, they are kind of generic because, well, people who are creating content, more or less, they have the exact same needs. Most of the professionals like to journal and create journals entry. The moment that they understand journal as we do, that it's as the entry point of information to the PKI system. And well, based on that is the moment that you can keep growing the structure, as we have seen for many of our members have created fully customized things inspired initially by our approach, but then understanding the basics, the concepts and the workflows that we are sharing there, how we organize everything, and then they customize it to their own needs. And that's the way it should go. And that's why we keep adding expansion based on, well, requests that we receive from thousands of people that we have in myICOR that tell us, well, their needs or their problems or the use cases that they would like to be handled. At the moment that we consider that something is quite generic or very useful for the rest of the people, well, we'll create it without any problem.
Yeah. And another question that comes up over and over is, I understand that you just moved to the updated scaffolding. Did you do this twice, once for personal and once for work? Or did the transition move to a single scaffolding or for both? And there's also from Peter inside the chat, the member chat, the new folder structure use personal examples, for example, passports for documents. If my PK accommodates business, clients, etc., in the same flat folder structure, why not provide examples for how that works? So I just want to mention in this regards that this is what we'll teach in ICOR, and we cannot keep repeating this over and over. People join and they look into the PK and they find this interesting, but ignore the methodology behind this. If you understand what the ICOR framework is, and we showed it in the last session again, and I will do now again because we cannot emphasize this enough, then just by understanding the ICOR framework, not the methodology even, but just looking at this, you will understand, or you will get the answer to your question. So here, it's from the last session. And these are these four circles. You have the personal knowledge management circle. You have the personal project management circle. That's the action part in personal. Business knowledge management and business project management. And this is what you use to lay out the tools that you use for these different areas. So if you have a client database that lives on, I don't know, Intercom, Mesh, you name it, Notion, whatever. Don't move this into a local folder if this is actually a business database. Instead, you keep it here. You place here in this ICOR framework to have it for yourself visually present. And then this is my local folder. See, it's just living. That's the PKA folder living in this one circle. And now I can link to any of these. So I can say here in this example, Airtable back then was our actual client data in there. So I can make a direct connection to even visually represent that I'm connecting this. And now I can work in my local context with my personal knowledge base, but I don't need to load in 16,000 agents into 16,000 client files into my local folder. And that's important, that you offload whatever is necessary when it comes to more complex databases and context. Also, information that is shared with the team shouldn't live in, human team shouldn't live in your local folder. There might be, you have on Dropbox maybe SOPs or like ClickUp, okay? You have standard operating procedures, business details about your values, your goals, or whatever. Again, API connection, and I have the context here. And in this folder here, this is me thinking about business strategy, thinking about the bigger picture, and about things that have nothing to do with the operational business itself. So this is where the confusion comes up then with the question, but how do I integrate now my business? So let's say you're a solopreneur. I would still have a separate folder. And in fact, I have a separate folder that's not here, but I don't think I can add a, yeah, well, I will add this option. So we can add actually several folders here, but here, or here, it doesn't matter. These are details, but here I have a separate folder and they have a similar setup than the PKA, but with very specific instructions on how to work inside the business. I need to have this separated. I don't want to combine my private thoughts with business support tickets, for example, and that's where there's a separate folder. It has nothing to do with personal knowledge management. It is the operations of the business, and there will be always reasons to use different tools. Now, there was another comment about here. In this context, I wonder if you have tried to add folders like tasks and events and hire new agents to help you with the action part with tasks, day-by-day choices, calendar appointments, and so on. This is where this is. Todoist, Sansama, calendar, all the things that we teach in the ICOR journey, why you need to have a planner, why you need to have a task manager, why you need to have a Google Calendar. But beware, I mentioned the type of tools and not tool names, okay? I didn't say you need Todoist, you need Sansama, you need Google Calendar, you need a task manager, a planner, and a Google Calendar. What does this mean when you approach it from this perspective? It means that you can replicate this in your folder. Beware, it's not that easy, but you need to understand, okay, I need to have a task manager, I need to have a planner, and I understand how this works and how I connect these things together. And now I can build this myself and I can visualize everything in one place. And in fact, that's exactly what Paco has with his PKA. He killed Sansama. He still uses Todoist in a connection with Calendar. And he connects to Google Calendar to visualize this in his own interface, not inside the folder. So see, now we're getting confused, and it's advanced shit that we're talking about here. If you have no clue about the basic structures of a productivity system end to end.
Yeah, I think that we can go to the basics, because I think that the misunderstanding is, at least that's our experience after facing thousands of professionals for years, is that people are obsessed between splitting two worlds, okay? Work-related things versus personal-related things, okay? And we think about personal-related things like your own growth, your errands, your problems at home, your personal finances, your family, whatever. And there's like another world that is the work-related, okay? Things that are related to my work. And that's how people are, in my opinion, confused about how to split things, because in ICOR, what we split is your individual world versus the team-related world, okay? Things that I don't want to share due to privacy, due to I want to nurture this knowledge before sharing it with the team. Many reasons, okay? And I think that the moment that they understand this is the moment that they really understand how a productivity system really works, okay? Because going back to the basics, I don't care. I mean, for me, it's in the same area. I don't know if I need to send my son to the university than if I'm the only responsible to prepare a budget for a client. Okay, that's something that has a deep impact into me as an individual. Okay, that the team has nothing related to this story. Okay, it depends on me and it's my responsibility. That's why it's important to understand that you should see the world in these two main areas, okay? In ICOR, we call them personal, okay? And the other one is business. But when we mean business, we mean team related, okay? Information and action that are shared with a team of human people,
And
okay?
before,
not AI, human people.
before all the
And I
solopreneurs
think,
switch off now, right? Stay with us, because when Paco mentions team related, they say, yeah, but I'm a solopreneur. I'm not working corporate. I don't care about this shit.
Right.
Well, I don't. Have you finished? No. Go on,
no,
and then we will
because
follow
I think
up
that
with
this is
this
important.
context too, right?
This is important because the moment that you understand that you need to face the world of productivity, looking at things that I'm the only responsible, okay? Because we have to take into account that that information and that action have a deep impact into our daily lives, okay? If I need to schedule a meeting to meet, I don't know, a manager of a university, that affects my time, okay? I need to plan those things out. And I don't care if before that I have had a meeting, okay, related to my company or my work, okay? So the moment, and that doesn't mean that you are not able to split your individual world in personal things and work-related things. That doesn't mean that, okay? That means that talking about the system that we need to design and be aware of, we should pay attention to things that only affects to me versus things that affect the whole team and that I want to share, because that's why this one folder or another folder, what is this all about? Well, the things that we put in the ICOR framework into the personal area, the things that only affect to me, that should live in one folder, okay? If I have information related to a project that it has a relationship with my company, but it's the information that I don't want to share with anyone, okay? Comments about a client, my own thoughts, how I am preparing a new product that I want to present to my manager. I don't know. All that information belongs to that folder, okay? I need to have one folder that knows everything about me, because everything that is related just to me has a deep impact, and my AI, my PKM needs to be aware of that, okay? Especially if we want to keep delivering the system into the world of action, okay? Because actions will consume time, and time, it's something that we need to manage when it's related to ourselves, okay? And then Tom will explain the approach to team-related things, no matter that, for instance, you are a solopreneur, okay? Because this doesn't mean that you need to have a team of 10 people waiting for you to start creating that structure in the business area of the ICOR
And that's very
framework.
important. And I just answered today to an inner circle member inside the community in more detail. As this is that's the right approach to overall productivity, no matter what industry you're working in. If you say, I'm a solopreneur, I don't care about teams, and I will always be just a single person and so on. Yeah, if you think this is good for you, and you, I don't know, if you have a laundry business and this is the only thing that you do every day, you have no ambitions to scale or look outside the box or something like that, then keep it running. No need to add friction on top of something that is already running. But if you are here, because most people are here to optimize their existing work, it's not that's where this solopreneur excuse doesn't count, because I was a solopreneur myself in 2018 when I launched the paperless movement as a side hustle to my full-time job in big corporate. So the first thing I did as a solopreneur was installing a proper project management tool. Back then it was Asana, and later on it was ClickUp. And I was the only person working inside this overkill tool, if you want to say. But what it gives me, and Notion was also somewhere in between, what it gives me the overview of the things, goal planning, creating the projects out of these, creating proper tasks. Being just one person, it makes me clear what I need to focus on. I have to prioritize, but I cannot do this if I don't have this project management perspective. By the way, what we teach in the project management like a pro course. And then why do you do this? First of all, you keep switching heads as a solopreneur. You are everything. You are the accountant, you are the content creator, you are the business owner, you're the customer support, whatever you have there. And you need to become aware that you're wearing these hats. And best to make this tangible is to pretend that you are a team yourself and that you have to split yourself between the different things. So this means as a solopreneur, I cannot be only the expert in what I'm the expert in. I also have to take care of all the other things around it. So with this approach in mind, starting your business as a solopreneur, you will make out from the get-go a scalable business. You just need to flip the switch and hire people for the positions that you've done manually over and over, and you perfectly know how they get done, where to manage these tasks and so on. And that's exactly what I did. I instantly had 5 people working for me, and unlike other creators on YouTube, my business didn't crash because they didn't know what to do. They just joined a running system and they removed exactly the things that I didn't want to do in the business because I was too expensive for the accounting. That's how I calculated myself, right? So I needed to make content creation. So I removed all these frictions to people. And now it's just Paco and me, and it's all offloaded to AI. And at least in the myICOR business, right? Paco still has 70 people in his other business, for example. But this is how you get this mindset about how you build a business and how you run it. And even if you stay a solopreneur, you will be much more aware of what is going on in your business and how much effort you put into the different things, and then make decisions where you say, well, it's impossible to do this at this level. I need to do less in order to keep the business running by focusing on something else. And that's why it's impossible to ignore the business part in the ICOR framework if you're here for optimizing your productivity or starting your business or, scaling your business. Because then we go into the automation like a pro course in the ICOR frame, in the ICOR journey, where we make you realize what business processes are. And well, most people that we ever met never thought really about what they are doing every day or what the whole team is doing step by step in process steps. The first time they mapped this out, I clearly remember there's still the example in the course where the business owner mapped out the business processes with 13 people in a business. And I said, okay, and where are you at these different processes? And he was at 80% of the whole workflow, him doing it. He was the bottleneck for decision making. He was the guy doing the things in specific areas. And then I say, and your ambition is to scale. So look at this. And I just doubled this workflow, and he suddenly appeared all over the place and realized, okay, that's the reason why the business cannot be scaling, because I'm the bottleneck for everything. But that's something impossible to realize if you don't make this visualization of the whole thing. And if you have the option starting out, start with this in mind, that you are yourself a team, and pretend that if I would hire somebody, this person would do this. It will kill the onboarding time and many things along with it. So see, I didn't mention AI, nothing. It's still the same principles. And what we do now with AI is exactly the same. The AI just took over the workflows where we perfectly knew can be automated and delegated. And that's something that applied in the past years for automation and now for AI, no difference. So let's go back to ICOR and double down on this, guys. We cannot repeat it. Well, in fact, that's the feedback that we get. People join for myPKA and they stay for ICOR because they realize, oh, that's how I take notes. That's where I find information later. That's how I organize my actions throughout the week. All the things you find inside ICOR without any AI use at all. I'm pretty sure most of people using AI, doing just these principles will have such a productivity boost that they don't even look into AI anymore because it is already so much more efficient.
Yeah, and I think that understanding this individual versus team approach is what creates the difference. I would like to end up to close this episode by sharing what belongs to individual versus what belongs to the team related to business, okay? And it's my content generation, okay? How I generate articles, okay? Well, I have a work stream, okay, where every single piece of content has different statuses, okay, and that pipeline, it's something that I run on my own. That's something that it doesn't affect the team at all. They don't care if an article is in draft, it's in next, it's in the statuses that I have thought about after years of creating articles. That belongs to my PKA, okay? And I create that work stream there because I want specific agents, okay, to help me draft the things, to create the feature image of that article. That's something that belongs to me. It's business related, but it's my own responsibility. And for the team, being inside that process will be noise. And we don't want that the team related productivity system is affected by noise, okay? We just want signal. The thing is that the team needs to be aware of, for instance, the article that I have published. And it's at that moment, okay, that when an article is perfectly ready to be published, it's the moment that I publish it through my agents, okay, in the BKA area, okay, what we call business knowledge management, so that the team knows, have access to the published article that I have just published, because that's important, that signal, okay? For instance, talking about Tom and myself, well, Tom has access to those articles and he can think about creating a lesson, creating a video, being inspired to whatever, okay? And that's what creates the difference. And that's why inside my PKA, that famous folder that we have been referring, I have all that work stream that is business related, but it only affects to me. Whereas, imagine I'm feeding this to the business knowledge management, because not only, for instance, Tom can be inspired, but also our agents, okay? Our agents related to my ICOR, that is the team that we have currently now, is fed by this type of content that we generate. And then it can point out to answer a question to any of our members, for instance. And that's the moment that we understand what belongs to the business knowledge management area, that is the team related area in the ICOR framework, versus the personal, the individual related area, that is the one that we have in that famous scaffold of PKA that we create. But in that PKA, I also have agents that give me, I don't know, recommendations about philosophy, about my life, okay? That is, it's aware of all the things that are running in my personal life, okay? My personal life that is not related to the work, because these are the moments that we can create connections between what we are as a human being, because at the end, I'm just one person that dedicate time to different type of things, okay? One are work-related, another one are personal-related, but there are connections, and that's what we create with this PKA, okay? That at the end, thanks to AI, I'm able to quickly create those connections between, for instance, that previous meeting that I said with a manager of a university and a meeting that I had with a client, because there are connections that AI is able to create, okay, based on an holistic approach to my assistant as a human being. And I think that by focusing on that approach, is much easier to understand these questions of one folder, two folders, three folders, one for the business, another for personal things, or all those type of things. And I think that this is something that we expand, obviously, inside our membership, because it's full of nuances, okay? But I think that the main principle is the one that we have just explained.
Exactly, Paco. And with this, we will move on to the next week.
Yeah, always.
And catch you Inner Circle members up tomorrow in the live call.
For sure. Take care, guys. Thank you for being here. Bye.